Jai Hind student, welcome to English class, and today we are going to study chapter number 4 actually according to the revised chapter uh, chapter number 2, the enemy. And for this, first of all, I am going to share the story with you. Please have a look and watch it carefully on the screen. Here it is, students. Now today we have to begin from page number 34, the second last paragraph. Students, since story is long, but according to new pattern that some of the extract from story from vistas can also be asked, and for that it is necessary for you to understand each and every line, because any of the extract, any of the paragraph can be given in your question paper, and 4 questions of 1 marks each can be asked from that particular paragraph. So it is very important to understand that each and every paragraph. So please be attentive and listen very carefully. So let us begin from here. See the second last paragraph. She hoped anxiously that this man had not been tortured, and it was at this moment that she observed deep red scars on his neck just under the ear. Now Hannah was thinking about all this, that before that she was also thinking about the General Takima. Remember students, this name General Takima, yesterday also I told you about it, because this is also very important character of the story. He is the general, he is the army chief, and he is very ruthless. And she was thinking that if the prisoner Tom was in his custody, so he must have received some scars, he must have been tortured. But to see him, that she was hoping that he, means Tom, the prisoner to whom they were treating, he had not been tortured much. But by that time, while she was thinking all about this, that it was all this moment that she observed a deep red scars on his neck just under the ear. She observed, she found, she looked that there was a scar, there was a sign of injury on his neck just under the ear. Those scars, she murmured, and lifting her eyes to Sadao, indicating towards her husband, Dr. Sadao, she indicated towards the injury mark, towards the scars on the neck of the prisoner. But he did not answer. At this moment he felt the tip of his instrument strike against something hard dangerously, but he did not pay any heed towards Hannah's wordings, because at this moment that he felt the tip of his instrument. With the instrument he was trying to locate the bullet, because bullet was still stuck on the lower part of his back. So his instrument hit something, and which seemed to be quite dangerous. That shows that involvement of Dr. Sada. He was completely involved in his operation and trying to get the bullet, trying to locate the bullet so that he can take it out from his body. And where it was dangerously, it was near the kidney, and it was located near the kidney. All thought left him. He felt only the purest pleasure now that he was happy, he was satisfied that he was able to locate the bullet in his body. So he was feeling pleasure, and he probed, means examined with his fingers delicately, very softly, familiar with every atom of his human body, because he was an excellent doctor. He was very skilled doctor. He knows each and every part of the body, so he was able to locate its exact position, means exact position of the bullet in his body. His old American professor of uh, anatomy student, it's a science of body. Now he remembers about uh, his American professor of anatomy. He had seen to that knowledge, and because once while he was teaching there in his class to his medical students in America, he used to tell that please underline this statement, student. Ignorance of human body is the surgeon's cardinal sin. Sirs, addressing to his students, medical students, he used to tell that, ignorance of human body is surgeon's cardinal sin. Means if anybody who wants to be a surgeon, who wants to operate any human body, then he must have the knowledge, complete knowledge of each and every parts of the body. And if it is not so, if he is ignorant about the human's body, means it is like a, and even though he is going to perform the operation, it is like a sin, and because he will be unable to operate successfully. And he had thundered at his classes year after year to operate. Now he also, Dr. Sada also remembers that he kept on saying for years in his classes that to operate, another important statement, to operate without as complete knowledge of body as if you had made it, anything less than that is a murder. It will be like a murder if you don't have the complete knowledge of the human body, and even though you are operating, it means there will be the doubt of successful operation, and it will be like a murder, that the surgeon is going to murder of that patient. So he remembers, while he was a skilled doctor, and while he was able to locate the exact position of the bullet where it was stuck, so he remembers the statements of his anatomy professor in America. And now see, students, that in next see here in next paragraph, that it is not quite at the kidney, my friend, Sadao murmured. It was his habit to murmur to the patient when he forgot himself in an operation, because he completely involved in operation, and that's why that he always he forgets that who is the person to whom that he was operating. My friend, he always called his patients, and so now he did, forgetting that this was his enemy. Even that means he forgot he was treating him as a patient only, and it was his professional call that to any of his patient, whether he is friend, whether he is enemy, he was addressing them my friend. So he was also addressing as my friend to Tom. In this case, he was the enemy, not his friend actually. So then quickly, with the cleanest and most precise incisions, cleanest and most precise incisions means operation, that he made a very exact and very clean operation, and the bullet was out. In this way he was able to take the bullet out of his body. The man quivered, but he was still unconscious. The man moved a little, trembled a little, but still he was unconscious. Nevertheless, he muttered a few English words, but even though that he felt pain, so that's why in pain that he said few words, like he said guts means Einstein, guts means intestine, sorry, intestine, because, and he muttered choking, they got my guts, means he said that someone has taken out his intestine from his body. Sadao, Hannah cried, means Hannah also felt pain, so she indicated towards Sadao. Then Dr. Sadao said her to keep quiet, not to say anything, and let him do his work. The man sank again into silence, so profound, so deep, that Sadao took off his wrist, hating the touch of it. Yes, there was still a pulse, so faint. Now Sadao, felt his pulse, and still it was a faint, it was a weak, feeble, that pulse was very weak, but enough if he wanted the man to live, to give hope. But it was, sufficient to give hope for him to live, means he was out of danger. But certainly I do not want this man to live, he thought. But still that thought, that conflict in his mind was going on, because he was an enemy and he was trying to save the life of an enemy. He was trying to snatch the life from the jaws of death to an enemy. So that's why that conflict was still going on in his mind, and that's why he said that, but certainly I don't want this man to live. No more anesthetic, and he told to Hannah not to give any more the anesthetic to him, and he turned as swiftly as though he had never paused, and from his medicines he chose a small vial. Small vial means a small bottle of injection, and from it filled a hypodermic and thrust it into the patient's left arm. And then after he had taken an injection from a small bottle, and then he had given the injection to the patient. Then putting down the needle, he took the man's wrist again. He felt the pulse again, and the pulse under his fingers fluttered once or twice and then grew stronger. And but now he felt that his pulse now has become stronger, and then he said that this man will live in spite of all kind of danger, in spite of all the serious injury. Then he declared finally that this man is going to live, means he was completely out of danger now. And then Hannah also felt a sigh of relief. The young man woke so weak, his blue eyes so terrified when he perceived where he was. And when the young man means that American soldier, the enemy, when he woke up, then he seems to be scared, seems to be terrified, as that he wanted to know that where he was. And that Hannah felt compelled to apologize, and she herself served him, for none of the servants would enter the room, because that servants none of the servants were allowed to enter into the room. That's why Hannah herself had to prepare food and serve him. When she came in the first time, she saw him summon his small strength to be prepared for some fearful thing. And when Hannah came, then came in his room first time, she realized that he was trying to summon, he was trying to gather his strength, because he had already been very weak, and he was trying to gather some strength to be prepared for some fearful thing. And in this way that he was ready, because he still did not know where he was, so that's why he was trying to make himself strong to face the danger, as he was still scared, as he did not know that where he was. And don't be afraid, she begged him softly. And then Hannah realized what he was thinking, that the fear was being reflected from his face. Then she told, no need to be afraid. She consoled him. How come you speak English? He gasped, and then that slowly he said that how I came here, and you speak English, and how you can speak English. Then she told that she was a long time in America. She spent a very long time in America, and that's why she knows English well. And she saw that he wanted to reply to that, but he could not. And so she knelt and fed him gently from the porcelain spoon. And then that she indicated him to keep quiet, and after that she knelt down and gave him food gently. And he ate unwillingly, he was not willing, still he was afraid, but he ate the food. And but still he ate, means unwillingly he took the food. Now you will soon be strong, she said, not liking him, and yet moved to comfort. Though still she was thinking that he is an enemy, she was not liking him. But even though she was trying to console him by telling that you will be stronger, you will be healthy soon. He did not answer to it. And then when Sadao came in the third day after the operation, he found the young man sitting up, and his face bloodless with the effort. And when Dr. Sadao came in the third day after the operation in his room, he found that he was trying to sit up, and his face bloodless with the effort. And because of putting that much effort to sit, that he was feeling weak. Lie down, Sadao cried. Do you want to die? And then he instructed him not to repeat that, not to put pressure on his body, otherwise that he would be died. And so he forced the man down gently and strongly and examined the wound. Once again he pushed him down to lay down on the bed, and then he examined his wound once again. And you may kill yourself if you do this sort of thing, he scolded. And then in scolding manner he told to him that means he should not put pressure on his body, otherwise that he will not be able to survive. Even after knowing that still that conflict was going on in his mind, that he is enemy, but as a doctor he was performing his duty very sincerely. He was not leaving any stone unturned in order to make him healthy. And so, what are you going to do with me? The boy was curious to know from him that what is next going to happen with him. So he asked to Dr. Sada that what he was going to do with him. And he looked just now barely 17. At that time he was looking just like 17 year old. And are you going to hand me over? He was afraid that they would hand him over to the police, and his fear he disclosed before Dr. Sadao. For a moment Sadao did not answer, and he finished his examination, and he examined him carefully, and then pulled the silk quilt over the man, and after that he covered his body with the quilt, means he was still taking care of him nicely. And I do not know myself what I shall do with you, he said. I ought of course to give you to the police. And he said that I myself, he still was confused what to do with, means on one hand he was trying to save his life, but on the other hand as a doctor he was performing his duty. But since he was a patriot, he had a loyal duty, he was also very sincere towards his country, and at that time he was an enemy. So he also had to perform his duty as a nationalist, as a loyal citizen. So that's why he was still in confusion. So he said that he himself did not know what he was going to do with him. And then of course he said that I ought to court you, of course, to give you to the police. And but even though he said definitely, means he should hand him over to the police, it was his moral duty. And you are a prisoner. And he told that because that he was a prisoner, no, do not tell me anything. And then when he realized that Tom, the prisoner, the enemy, wanted to tell something to him, wanted to reply to him, he stopped him not to say anything. And he put up his hands as he saw the young man was about to speak. Do not even tell me your name unless I ask it. And then very categorically he stopped him to tell anything, even to tell his name, because he did not want to develop any kind of sympathy still with him, although he was treating him well. And they looked at each other for a moment, and then the young man closed his eyes and turned his face to the wall. And after that he closed his eyes and turned his face to the wall. Okay, that he kept quiet. Then outside the door Hannah was waiting for Sadao, and he saw at once that she was in trouble. Then outside the door that Dr. Sadao found that Hannah was waiting for him, and he saw at once that she was in some kind of pain, some kind of trouble. Sadao, Yumi tells me the servants feel they cannot stay if we hide this man here anymore. She was worried about the servant from servant side, and she told that Yumi, that one of the servant that who was taking care of their children, she told that servants feel they cannot stay if, means servant warned her that until the Tom, the prisoner, will stay there at home. Uh, this man here any more. The servants feel they cannot stay, and then they will not be stayed there for their services towards the towards Dr. Sadao and Hannah. So she tells me that they were saying that you and I were so long in America that we have forgotten to think of our country first. Even that she told that servants blamed them that since they had stayed so many years in America, and that's why they had developed a sympathy towards Americans, and that we have forgotten to think of our own country, and they think we like Americans. And she told that they think that we both like Americans more than the Japanese. It is not true, Sadao said. Americans are our enemies. But in this matter, that Sadao was also very clear, and so many times he had repeated this, that Americans were his enemies. And but I have been trained not to let a man die if I can help it. Now, but what was the problem? Why he was trying to help him? Because that he said, but I have been trained not to let a man die if I can help it. If I can help it, I can save it. Because he was not a common citizen of the country of Japan. Rather, he was doctor first. So that's why he meant to say that he just wanted to, he was performing his duty as a doctor to save the life of a patient, not considering whether he was enemy or a friend. And the servants cannot understand that, she said. Naturally, that worriedly, she said that servants will not be able to understand this fact. No, he agreed. Means even though that he also, Sadao also agreed to this fact. Neither neither seemed able to say more, and somehow the household dragged on. But neither seemed able to say more, and that both of them were not able to say anything more regarding that matter. And but somehow they had to manage their house. The servants grew more watchful, and now day by day servants were getting more watchful, and more worried about the stay of the enemy in their house. Their courtesy was as careful as ever, but their eyes were cooled upon pair to whom they were hired. Their courtesy, they were very humble still, and because they were very sincere, very faithful towards the doctor's couple, but they were very careful. They did not like that act of Dr. Sadao to save the life of an enemy and giving shelter him to his house. And it is clear that what our master ought to do, the old gardener said one morning. And one morning the old gardener was an old man, so he was talking among means all the servants were talking among themselves, and he was telling that it is clear that our master ought to, means the Dr. Sadao, it is clear that what our master ought to do, means what he should do. He had worked with flowers all his life and had been a specialist too in moss. And for Sadao's father, he had made one of the finest moss gardens in Japan, sweeping the bright green carpet constantly so that not a leaf of or a pine needle marred the velvet of the the softness of its surface. And then he was also that he told that he had been working there for so long, even that he had worked for Dr. Sadaw's father, and he had created a, in the garden, the moss garden, the finest moss garden, garden of grass for his father. And constantly he was taking care of it, so that no leaf should be, means it shouldn't be dirty at all. So faithful he was. And my old master's son knows very well what he ought to do. And he now said, pinching a bud from a bush as he spoke. And then he was telling uh, that the old master's son knows, that means Dr. Sadav, he mean to say that Dr. Sadav knows it very well what is his duty at that time. He mean to say that he should not save the life of a doctor, rather he should hand him over to the police. And he was somewhere that he was angry, and he showed his anger by pinching a bird, by plucking a bud from a bush, from a plant, as he spoke. And when the man was so near death, why did he not let him bleed? And he told very clearly that while that the man was about to die, why he saved his life, why he not let him die. He had this kind of anger, and which was out of patriotic feeling and out of the hatred against the enemy, against the white people, against the Americans. And that young master is so proud of his skill to save life, that he saves any life. The cook said contemptuously. And then the cook was also that playing the same tune, as she was also talking in the same way. She was also angry with that act of her master. And she split fowls, a bird, means she was having a bird, and she broke the neck of that bird very skillfully, and held the fluttering bird, and let its blood flow into the roots of a wisteria vine. And in her anger, she expressed her anger in that way by plucking the neck of a bird, and the pouring the blood of it into a plant. Blood is the best of fertilizers, and the old gardener would not let her waste a drop of it. And that he was also putting, that old gardener was putting all the blood, pouring all the blood into the garden, into the plant's root. And it is the children to whom we must think. Now these were the opinion of those two servants. Remember, students, that three servants were there: old gardener and a cook. They had expressed their opinion. They were not they were very angry. They were not that agree to the act of the Dr. Sadav to save the life of the enemy soldier. And the third one was Yumi, who was taking care of the children. And now that what was her opinion, that Yumi said that it is the children of whom that we must think, and what will be their fate. What will be their fate if father is condemned as a traitor? If the father, means Dr. Sadav, will be, she was worried about the children, and she used to tell that she told that what will happen with the children in case that father, means Dr. Sadav, will be arrested as a traitor. Then they did not try to hide what they said from the ears of Hannah, as She stood arranging the day's flowers in the veranda nearby. While they were talking, that they were conscious enough that their mistress, means Hannah, was nearby, and she was arranging the day's flowers in the garden, and deliberately they were talking like that so that Hannah can hear. And they were not afraid at this time, they were not afraid of their masters, and she knew that they spoke on purpose that she might hear. And Hannah also realizing this fact, that they were talking purposely so that she can listen it and tell to Dr. Saddam. And that they were right, she knew too, in most of her being. And she was also knowing that whatever they were talking the fact, they were right at their place. They had the patriotic feeling, and it was quite natural, as they were the common people, they were not the doctors, and they were thinking about the common people. They were thinking, while Americans were killing Japanese ruthlessly, why should they save the life of an American prisoner? And but there was another part of her which she herself could not understand, and it was not sentimental liking of the prisoner. She had come to think of him as a prisoner, and she had not liked him even yesterday. That she had a different part, because she knows it well, that they were not thinking, they were also patriot, they were also very loyal towards their country. They also did not like that American prisoner, they also hate them, but they had another duty. Since the Dr. Sada was a doctor, so it was his professional call to save the life of a dying man. And then she had not liked him even yesterday, when he had said in his impulsive way, emotionally, he had said emotionally, anyway, let me tell you that my name is Tom. Even that Hannah tells that even yesterday while she went into his room, then Tom, the prisoner, became very emotional, and emotionally he told they were not interested. The doctor couple were not interested to know about him anything, even about his name. But even though deliberately he told his name to Hannah, that his name is Tom. Remember, student, the Tom. As I was talking about the four character, and four character, this is Tom is the fourth important character. Another character, you can also think about that Dr. Sada's father. We had discussed about four important characters. That another one is Dr. Sada's father, who was very loyal towards his country. But that means I'm talking here about the Tom. Remember this name. Who was Tom? Tom was the prisoner of war in order to escape, who had been hit by the bullet by the Japanese army, and who was seriously injured, to whom that Dr. Sadao was sheltering in his house and treating. Now let us see this. Now see, students, and she had only bowed her little distant bow, and then she had greeted him from a distance yesterday even. And while Tom was very emotional, and she saw hurt in his eyes. She saw hurt means guilt in his eyes. He was feeling guilty that they were so ruthless toward the Japanese people, and one of the Japanese couple was saving his life. So that's why he had a guilt feeling in his eyes, Hannah realized. But she did not wish to assuage it, but even though she did not try to console him, and indeed that he was a great trouble. Indeed, remember, student, indeed that he was the Tom, the prisoner, was a great trouble in his house for doctor's family, Dr. Sada's family. She realized it until he is staying there in her house. They will not be out of danger. They will always be in danger to be arrested. I think that's all for today, students. And now rest part of the story we will study the next day. And till then, what you have to do, that those questions, the textual questions which are given in your book, and answers you can easily get. If you have understood this, then easily you can understand the answer, and you try to write answers in your own words in your notebook. And remaining part we will study the next day. Till then, thank you and have a nice day. Take care of yourself.